It's weird how you can watch your whole world collapse through a cracked window and still not really understand it's happening. It's even weirder when the person swinging the wrecking ball is your own dad. So here's the mess. After my mom walked out when I was 8, it was just me and my dad. We weren't exactly the picture of family bliss, more like two strangers trying to share the same burned-down tent. Still, there was something there. Until there wasn't. One Thursday, out of the blue, Dad asked me to pack a small bag. "We're going for a drive," he said, voice tight like he was afraid it might snap. We drove across town in silence, past places that felt familiar until everything started to look like nowhere. He pulled up in front of this faded yellow house, paint peeling, wind chimes jangling in the warm breeze. I glanced at him, expecting some explanation, but his eyes were locked on the road ahead as if he couldn't look at me. "Go knock," he muttered. That was it. When the door opened, there stood a woman I'd never seen before. She looked about Dad's age, hair streaked with gray, eyes tired but kind in a way that scared me more than if they'd been cold. Before I could ask anything, Dad was already back in the car, door slamming shut. He didn't even check if I was watching. And then he was gone. No goodbye. Not even a look back. The woman introduced herself as Miss Ellen, but her voice barely registered. My ears were ringing too loud, heart punching holes through my ribs. I remember standing there, bag dangling from my hand, sweat dripping down my neck, thinking maybe this was a test. Maybe Dad would come back around the block, smiling awkwardly, saying he just needed a break. He didn't. Miss Ellen ushered me inside. The place smelled like lavender and old books. "I know this is a shock," she said gently, but her words felt like they were coming from underwater. She told me Dad had arranged things with her a while ago. Apparently he'd decided he couldn't handle it anymore. Handle me. That first night, I lay awake on a scratchy twin bed in a stranger's house, replaying every fight, every silence, every sigh of exhaustion Dad had let slip. Each memory twisted into a knife. Had he always been planning this? Did he ever really see me, or just the burden I became? The next morning, Miss Ellen made pancakes. She tried to act like everything was normal, but I barely touched them. Words stuck in my throat like they were afraid to come out. What was there to say? "Hi, I'm the kid whose dad dropped him like last week's trash?" Days blurred. Miss Ellen worked from home as an editor, so she was always around, asking if I wanted to join her on walks, offering to show me old photo albums. I kept saying no. My eyes stayed glued to the window waiting for Dad's car. Hoping. One afternoon a knock came at the door. For a split second my heart leapt, but it wasn't him. It was a boy about my age, messy blonde hair, skateboard under his arm. "You the new kid?" he asked. His voice wasn't mocking, just curious. His name was Mason. He lived 2 houses down and said Miss Ellen had called his mom to ask if he'd show me around. Part of me wanted to slam the door, but Mason shrugged. "Wanna come out or not?" Something in his easy tone cracked the wall I'd built, just enough for me to step outside. We spent the afternoon skating down cracked sidewalks, him laughing every time I nearly fell. Mason talked nonstop about school, about his dog, about how he once broke his arm trying to ollie over a bush. His stories were stupid, pointless, but comforting. Then out of nowhere he asked, "So what happened with your dad?" The question hit harder than any fall. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Mason didn't push. "It's cool," he said, like he understood more than he should have. That night I actually slept. Not because things were okay, but because for a few hours I'd felt like a regular kid again. The twist came 2 weeks later. Miss Ellen sat me down at the kitchen table, hands folded tight. "There's something I need to tell you," she began, voice shaking. Turns out, she wasn't some random neighbor Dad had found in desperation. She was my mom's half-sister, me aunt. A woman I'd never met because, after Mom left, Dad had cut off all contact with her side of the family. Miss Ellen had tried over the years to reach out, but Dad ignored every letter, every call. So when he showed up asking her to take me in, she agreed because, in her words, "You deserve someone who won't walk away." Hearing that felt like someone had opened a window in a room I didn't know was suffocating me. Dad hadn't just abandoned me, he'd kept me from people who might have loved me all along. In the weeks that followed, the anger set in. Anger at Dad for giving up. Anger at Mom for leaving. But also anger at myself for not seeing it coming. For still hoping he'd drive back any minute. Mason kept coming around, stubborn as gravity. He'd joke, drag me outside, challenge me to dumb races to the end of the street. Slowly, almost against my will, I found myself laughing again. Miss Ellen didn't ask too many questions, didn't force hugs, but she was always there, dinner on the table, light in the hallway, a soft good night as I closed my door. One rainy evening, Mason and I sat under the porch roof, watching water pour off the gutter. "You ever gonna call him?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. Truth was, I wanted to hear his voice, but I was terrified it'd hurt worse than silence. Mason nudged my shoulder. "Whatever you do, don't let it mess up your head forever. You're more than what he did." It sounded like something cheap from a movie, but somehow it stuck. That night, I found Miss Ellen in the living room, sorting through old family photos. My eyes landed on a picture of her and my mom when they were kids, same eyes as mine, same stubborn jaw. "Can you tell me about her?" I asked. My voice shook, but Miss Ellen just smiled, a sad, gentle smile. "Of course," she said. And she did. She told me about a mom I barely remembered, about how she used to sing in the kitchen, about her laugh that could fill a whole room. For the first time in years, my memories of her felt real again, not just ghost images at the edge of sleep. That's where I'll leave it for now. If anyone's wondering if I ever heard from Dad again, the answer is yes and no. But that's part of the story still to come. Funny thing about hope, it doesn't die all at once. It peels away in pieces, so thin you barely notice them missing until suddenly there's nothing left to hold on to. About 3 weeks after Dad left me at Miss Ellen's, I cracked. It was late past midnight and the house felt too quiet, too heavy. I slipped out of bed, grabbed my phone, and scrolled through old messages. The last text from Dad just said, "Be good, kid." Nothing else. Nothing about love or goodbye. Just be good. I stared at it until my vision blurred. Then, before I could talk myself out of it, I dialed his number. 1 ring. 2. 3. 4. Voicemail. I didn't leave a message. The next morning, Miss Ellen must have noticed something off in my face because she gently asked, "Did you try calling him?" I just nodded. Couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe right. She didn't push. Just placed a mug of tea in front of me, her hand brushing mine for half a second, a simple touch, but it landed deeper than she probably knew. Mason showed up later, carrying 2 cans of spray paint and a mischievous grin. "Let's do something stupid," he announced like it was the most natural thing in the world. We biked to an old underpass on the edge of town. The concrete walls were already a canvas of angry words, broken hearts, and graffiti tags. Mason handed me a can. "Write whatever you want," he said. At first I couldn't. The words in my head felt too ugly, too raw to show anyone, even on a wall no one cared about. But then I remembered Dad's face that last morning, blank, cold, gone before it even left. So I sprayed. "I wasn't too hard. You just stopped trying." The hiss of paint felt like exhaling after holding my breath too long. Mason didn't say anything, just gave a nod like he got it. Then he added his own. "Still here." 2 words. But it meant everything in that moment. We biked home under a bruised sky, streetlights blinking on one by one. My heart felt lighter, but the ache didn't go away, it just shifted, settled somewhere deeper. Back at Miss Ellen's, she didn't scold us for coming in late, or for the paint on my hands. She just said, "Wash up, dinner's getting cold." Her trust stung in a good way, like pressure on a healing bruise. The next day a letter came. My name on the envelope, Dad's handwriting unmistakable. My hands shook opening it. It wasn't an apology. Not really. He wrote about how life got too heavy and how I'm doing this for you so you have a better chance. He ended with, "Maybe one day you'll understand." I read it twice. 3 times. Then I crumpled it so tight it nearly tore. Maybe one day I'd understand? What was there to understand? That loving your own kid takes effort? That you don't just get to leave when it feels too hard? Miss Ellen watched me from the doorway, eyes soft but sad. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked. All I could say was no. Not yet. She nodded like she expected that answer. That evening, Mason and I sat on the curb outside his house, trading stories about childhood injuries and dumb decisions. Then, like a glitch in the conversation, I blurted, "I think my dad really doesn't want me." Mason's expression didn't change. He just kicked a rock into the street. "My dad left too," he admitted quietly. "When I was 6. Moved states. Got a new family. Hardly calls." I stared at him, the truth settling heavy between us. I'd always thought Mason was the kid who had it all together, funny, fearless, impossible to embarrass. But behind that grin there was a crack like mine. "Does it get better?" I asked. "Some days," he said. "Some days it still sucks. But you stop blaming yourself so much. That night, I sat in bed holding the letter. I didn't cry. The tears had run dry. Instead, I felt something new. A quiet, simmering anger that tasted almost like strength. A week later, Miss Ellen asked if I wanted to visit my mom's old favorite place, a small lake outside town, hidden behind a grove of pines. It felt wrong to say yes at first, like betraying Dad, but something in me needed it. The lake was still, almost glassy, dragonflies skimming the surface. Miss Ellen pointed to a half-rotted dock. She used to sit there for hours just thinking. Or not thinking at all. I walked to the end of the dock, the wood creaking under my weight. For a moment I imagined my mom there. Legs dangling over the edge, wind tugging at her hair. Not the ghost mom from my dreams, but a real person, flawed human, who had loved me once, even if she left. Miss Ellen joined me, sitting a careful distance away. "Your mom wasn't perfect," she said quietly. "But she loved you deeply. I wish you could remember the good parts better." "I don't remember much at all," I admitted. "That's okay," she said. "We can remember her together." A breeze lifted the surface of the lake into tiny ripples. I closed my eyes, letting the sounds fill me, water against wood, wind in the trees, Miss Ellen's steady breathing beside me. And for a moment, the ache softened. Later, in the car, I finally asked, "Why did you say yes when Dad asked you to take me?" Miss Ellen's grip tightened on the wheel. "Because I wanted to, honey. Your family. And because no child should feel thrown away." Those words sank deep, wrapping around the part of me that still felt worthless. The next big shift came unexpectedly. At school during lunch, Mason waved me over to sit with his group. At first, I stood frozen, cafeteria tray shaking in my hands. Then I saw Mason's grin, so normal, so stubbornly inviting, and walked over. It wasn't some magical movie moment where everyone cheered. But nobody told me to leave. They asked my name, what grade I was in, normal questions that felt surreal after weeks of feeling invisible. Afterward, Mason slapped my shoulder. "See? Told you they wouldn't bite." I managed a shaky laugh. It felt rusty and used but real. That weekend, Miss Ellen suggested something unexpected. "Would you like to come to therapy? Just to talk? No pressure." At first, shame rose in my throat like acid. Therapy felt like admitting I was broken. But later in my room I realized I was broken. And maybe it was time to do something about it. The therapist, Dr. Harris, was older, with silver hair and kind eyes behind round glasses. He didn't ask me to spill everything right away. Instead, he asked about small things, how I slept, what made me laugh, what hurt the most. "I'm angry," I admitted one session. "At Dad? At Mom? At myself?" "It's okay to be angry," he said calmly. "Anger shows you care. The trick is learning what to do with it." "What if I never stop being angry?" "Then you keep talking about it," he said. "Until it changes shape." Slowly, the sessions became less terrifying. Some days I barely spoke. Other days, words tumbled out faster than I could catch them. At home, Miss Ellen never asked what I talked about. She just listened when I felt like sharing. One night, I confessed, "I keep thinking maybe Dad will come back. And I hate that I still want him to." She sighed softly. "It's okay to want that. Wanting love isn't weakness." "But what if he doesn't?" "Then you'll still have people who won't leave," she said. I didn't answer. But the thought stuck with me. The next letter from Dad arrived a month later. Shorter than the first. No apology. Just, "Hope you're okay. Maybe we can talk soon." I didn't reply. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Instead, I kept living. Fall came, painting the trees in fire colors. Mason convinced me to join the school's skate club. I wasn't great, but I wasn't the worst. And every small win, lending a trick, making someone laugh, felt like a patch sewn into the hole Dad left. One crisp October evening, Miss Ellen brought home an old photo album. "I found this in storage," she said. "It's mostly pictures of your mom. And some of you as a baby." We sat on the living room floor, pages spread between us. There was Mom, smiling at a beach, her hair wind-tangled. There was Dad, too young, eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. And there was me, a baby on Mom's hip, reaching for Dad's hand. He was looking at me then, really looking, not through me. For a second, my chest squeezed so tight I couldn't breathe. There was love once. Real messy, complicated love. "What happened to them?" I whispered. "They got lost," Miss Ellen said softly. "Life overwhelmed them. But that doesn't mean you were never loved." I touched the photo, tracing baby me, trying to remember what it felt like to be wanted. That night, I dreamed of Dad. Not the man who drove away, but the younger dad from the picture, holding me under a sky so blue it hurt. When I woke up, I wasn't sure if the dream made me feel better or worse. A week later, Mason and I were skating after school when I fell hard. Scraped my knee bloody, palms raw. Mason reached out a hand, but I slapped it away, anger bubbling up. At Dad? At the world? At myself for falling? Mason didn't flinch. You okay? No, I snapped. Nothing's okay. Then stay down, he said. Or get up. Up to you. It was such a simple thing to say, but it cut through my anger like glass through cloth. I got up. We skated the rest of the way home in silence, my knee throbbing, but my heart steadier somehow. That night, I sat on the porch steps, letter from Dad in one hand, lighter in the other. I almost burned it. Almost. Instead, I tucked it back into the envelope. Not ready to forgive. But not ready to destroy it either. Miss Ellen came out, sat beside me. Hard day. Yeah. She didn't say, it'll get better. She just sat with me until the porch light flickered on, moths dancing around it. Maybe that's what love looks like, I thought. Not grand gestures. Just staying. Even when it's hard. Funny how you could be surrounded by people and still feel like you're standing on the edge of a cliff alone. Some days at Miss Ellen's, the house felt warm, smelled like cinnamon and fresh bread. Other days, the quiet pressed on my chest so hard I could barely breathe. Winter crept in early that year. Frost on the windows every morning, our breaths little ghosts in the cold air. Mason and I kept skating until the roads froze over. Then we'd sit on the porch steps, sharing stories that neither of us had told anyone else. One night, after skating, I finally told him about the last morning with Dad. How he avoided my eyes. How I chased the car barefoot until it turned the corner. My voice cracked, and for a second I thought I might break apart completely. Mason didn't say anything cheesy like he'll come back. Or it'll be okay. He just said, that sucks, man. Really sucks. And somehow that helped more than empty promises. A few days later, something happened that shook everything again. I came home from school to find Miss Ellen crying at the kitchen table, a letter crushed in her hand. The sight of her crying felt like watching a mountain crumble. What happened? I asked, panic spiking in my chest. She wiped her eyes, forcing a small smile. Just bad news about my sister. Nothing for you to worry about. But I did worry. Because until then, I told myself Miss Ellen couldn't leave. That she was solid, permanent. Seeing her cry cracked that illusion. That night, I lay awake thinking, what if she decided I was too much, too hard, like Dad did? The thought clawed at me until I couldn't stand it anymore. The next morning, over burnt toast, I blurted out, you're not gonna send me away too, are you? Miss Ellen's eyes widened, then softened in a way that made my throat ache. Oh honey. No. Never. You're not something I have to do. You're someone I want to be here. The words hit so hard my eyes burned. I nodded, afraid to speak, because if I opened my mouth I might cry. After that, something in me shifted. Not all at once. But enough. At school I started talking more. Answering questions in class instead of pretending to be invisible. Even laughing sometimes without it feeling forced. One afternoon while I was waiting for Mason, a kid named Tyler shoved past me, knocking my books to the floor. Watch it, charity case, he sneered. Old me might have mumbled sorry and picked up my books. But this time I stood up straight, heart pounding. You got a problem? I asked, voice shaking but loud enough to hear. Tyler blinked, surprised. Then Mason showed up, stepping between us, and Tyler backed off, muttering under his breath. You good? Mason asked. Yeah, I lied. But later, walking home, I realized, for the first time, I hadn't just let someone walk over me. At therapy, Dr. Harris called it, finding your voice. I called it surviving. The real twist came the week before Christmas. I came home to find Dad standing on the porch. He looked smaller than I remembered. Older too. His hair more gray, shoulders slouched. But it was him. I froze. My heart beat so hard I thought I'd pass out. For a second, all I could see was that morning he drove away. Hey kid, he said, voice hoarse. Miss Ellen stood in the doorway, face unreadable. What are you doing here? I managed to ask. He swallowed, eyes darting everywhere but at me. I thought maybe we could talk. Just talk. Every cell in my body screamed to run inside. Slam the door. Hide under the weight of the walls Miss Ellen built around me. But something kept me there. Okay, I said. Talk. We sat on the porch steps. The same steps where I'd spent so many nights trying to forget him. He started talking. About work. About being overwhelmed. About guilt. I thought I was doing you a favor, he said. You deserved better than a father who couldn't get his shit together. I stared at him. The words made sense, but they tasted like ashes. I didn't need perfect, I whispered. I just needed you. His shoulders shook. For the first time, I realized he was crying. Part of me felt sorry for him. Another part wanted to scream. Why wasn't I worth fighting for? He tried to hug me. I flinched. Not because I hated him, but because it felt too raw, too soon. I can't just forget, I said, voice shaking. You left me. And you didn't even say goodbye. I know, he rasped. I know, and I'm so sorry. We sat in silence, the winter air biting my skin. Finally, I stood up. I don't hate you, I said. But I don't trust you. Not yet. He nodded, tears frozen on his lashes. That's fair. Before he left, he handed me a small box. It was your mom's, he said. She wanted you to have it someday. I took it, hands trembling. After he drove away, Miss Ellen came outside, wrapping me in a hug. How do you feel? She asked. I don't know, I said honestly. Not better. Not worse. Just different. That's still progress, she whispered. Inside, I opened the box. A silver necklace, tarnished but beautiful, and a folded note in my mom's handwriting. For when you feel lost. You were always my brightest light. My breath caught. I pressed the necklace to my chest, as if it could anchor me to someone I barely remembered. That night, I dreamed of my mom again. Not as the sad, distant figure from my memories, but laughing, holding me close. When I woke up, my pillow was wet, but my chest felt lighter. Over winter break, Mason and I spent every spare minute at the skate park. We weren't great, but we were getting better. Each fall hurt less. Each landing felt like flying. One evening, sitting on the halfpipe, Mason asked, You gonna see him again? I don't know, I said. Maybe. I'm not ready. That's okay, he said. You don't owe him anything. Yeah, I said. But I owe myself something. Spring thawed the town slowly. Flowers pushed through frozen ground. The lake near Miss Ellen shimmered with new life. I started writing letters I never sent. To Dad. To Mom. Even to myself. In them, I said everything I couldn't say out loud. The anger, the grief, the hope that scared me more than anything. Some nights, Miss Ellen would find me asleep at the table, pen still in hand. She never scolded me. Just covered me with a blanket. At therapy, I finally told Dr. Harris my biggest fear. What if everyone leaves? He smiled gently. Then you'll grieve. And you'll heal. And you'll keep going. I don't want to keep getting hurt, I whispered. No one does, he said. But living is worth the risk. The last real twist came near the end of the school year. I got a call to the office during lunch. My stomach dropped thinking it was Dad. Instead, it was Grandma. My mom's mom. I barely remembered her. But there she was, sitting in the office chair, her face older, hair silver. I've been looking for you, she said softly. I'm sorry it took so long. I didn't know what to say. My mind flashed to the necklace, to the note from Mom. Why now? I asked. I didn't know where you were, she said, voice cracking. And I thought maybe you'd hate me for not being there. I swallowed, tears burning. I don't even know you. I'd like to change that, she whispered. If you'd let me. For a moment, I wanted to scream. Where were you when Dad left? When I needed someone. But another part of me, a part one barely recognized, just felt tired. Tired of hating. Tired of pushing everyone away. Maybe I said. We could start slow. Her shoulders relaxed, relief washing over her face. That's all I want. Miss Ellen picked me up after school. How'd it go? She asked gently. I don't know, I said. We'll see. That's brave, she said. I don't feel brave. You don't have to feel it to be it, she said. Summer came, warm and soft. Mason and I skated until sunset, laughing more than we fell. Sometimes Dad texted. Small things. How's school? Or saw your favorite candy made me think of you. I didn't always reply. But I didn't block him either. One evening, watching fireflies in the yard, I realized something. Maybe it wasn't about forgetting what happened. Maybe it was about learning to carry it without letting it crush me. I wasn't fixed. Some nights, the fear still woke me, sweat-drenched and shaking. Some mornings, the memory of being left still ached like fresh bruises. But there were good moments too. More and more of them. And slowly they started to add up. Miss Ellen bought me a new journal for my birthday. On the first page, she wrote, "Your story matters. Even the messy parts." I held the words close, because for the first time I believed they might be true. One afternoon near the end of summer, Miss Ellen called me into the kitchen. She had that look, the one that meant whatever she was about to say really mattered. "I got a call from your dad," she began carefully. "He asked if you'd come visit for a weekend." The words hung in the air like smoke. Part of me wanted to laugh it off. Another part, smaller but louder than before, felt curious. What if he really meant it this time? "Do you think I should go?" I asked, voice tight. "I think," she said, "that only you can answer that. But you don't have to decide today. And whatever you choose, it won't change how we feel about you here." That night, lying in bed, I turned the idea over and over in my head. I still remembered the burn of gravel under my bare feet chasing his car. But I also remembered how tired he looked on the porch months ago and the guilt in his eyes. I texted Mason, "What if I visit him?" After a few minutes, Mason replied, "Then you'll know. Better to know than wonder forever." So I said yes. Miss Ellen drove me over. The car ride felt longer than it really was, my heart hammering so loud it drowned out the music on the radio. Dad's place was small, clean in a careful, almost desperate way. When he opened the door, he looked nervous, more nervous than I felt. "Hey, kid," he murmured. "Thanks for coming." I stepped inside. It smelled like cheap coffee and detergent. There were photos on the wall, some of Mom, some old ones of me. Seeing them felt like a punch to the chest. Over the weekend he tried. Really tried. He burned pancakes Saturday morning and swore under his breath, then laughed when I teased him about it. We played cards. Watched a movie I'd already seen but pretended I hadn't. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward silences so long I thought they might swallow us both. Sometimes I caught him staring at me like he was trying to memorize my face. Each time it made something twist painfully in my chest. Saturday night, I asked, "Why do you really leave?" He didn't lie. Didn't sugarcoat it. "Because I was scared," he admitted, voice cracking. "Scared I'd ruin you. That you'd see me fail every day and hate me for it." "I did hate you," I whispered. "For a while." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I know. And I deserved that. But I missed you more," I added quietly. His shoulders slumped, relief and regret battling on his face. "I missed you too. Every single day." We didn't hug. Not then. But we sat together until midnight, talking about everything and nothing. Sunday afternoon, Miss Ellen came to pick me up. As I grabbed my backpack, Dad said, "If you ever want to come again, you can." "I know," I said. And I meant it. On the drive back, Miss Ellen didn't ask questions. She just let me stare out the window, thoughts swirling. At home, Mason called. "So, how was it?" "Strange," I admitted. "Good and bad at the same time." "That sounds about right," he said. School started up again, and life settled into a rhythm. Dad texted sometimes, and sometimes I texted back. Slowly, the sharp edge of the past dulled, though the scar stayed. One unexpected Saturday, Grandma showed up with a box of old photos. Pictures of Mom as a teenager, and even of me as a baby, things I'd never seen. We sat in the living room, Miss Ellen pouring tea, Mason leaning over the couch to look too. In one photo, Mom held me on her hip, grinning so wide it lit up her whole face. "She loved you so much," Grandma whispered, voice trembling. "I wish I could remember more," I said. "I wish that too," she replied softly. "But maybe we can keep her memory together." We made a little ritual. Every Sunday afternoon, Grandma would come over, and we'd go through a few more photos or letters. Sometimes we'd laugh. Sometimes I'd cry. But each time it felt less like I was losing something and more like I was finding a piece I'd forgotten. One Sunday, I found a photo of Dad and Mom together, smiling like nothing could ever break them. For a moment, I hated them both for leaving me. Then I just felt sad for them, for me, for all the things that didn't turn out the way they should have. In therapy, Dr. Harris asked, "Do you think you've forgiven him?" "I don't know if it's forgiveness," I said. "But I'm tired of carrying the hate around." "That's enough," he said gently. "That's more than enough." Spring turned to summer again. I got taller. Mason and I saved up for better skateboards. Miss Ellen taught me how to cook real meals, and I burned fewer and fewer of them. One evening, Dad came by. We sat on the porch like that first awkward day months ago. "I'm proud of you," he said suddenly. "For what?" I asked. "For still trying," he said. even when I made it harder. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. Sometimes that was enough. Later that night, Mason texted, "So are you guys okay now?" "We're not okay. But we're better," I replied. "Better's good," he wrote back. By the end of the summer, Grandma suggested visiting Mom's grave together. I'd never been. Standing there, the stone was smaller than I imagined. Simple. Her name, 2 dates, nothing else. I touched the cool marble. "I wish I could have known you better," I whispered. "But I'm trying to remember you the best I can." Grandma squeezed my shoulder. Miss Ellen stood a few steps back, giving me space. Dad came too, quietly placing flowers by the grave. We didn't say much. But in that silence, I felt something like peace. Driving home, Grandma said softly, "Your mom would be so proud of you." "I hope so," I murmured. "I know so," she replied. School resumed and Mason and I picked different electives. We still skated together but less often. New friends came, old ones drifted. Change hurt, but it didn't scare me as much. At therapy, I told Dr. Harris, "I'm still afraid people will leave." "And that's human," he said. "But now what would you do if they did?" "I think I'd be sad," I said. "But I'd keep going." "That's strength," he said. Not never falling but getting back up. My last big letter, the one I wrote to myself, ended with, "You survived the worst thing that could happen. And you kept going. I'm proud of you." Reading it back, I cried. But the tears felt different this time, like letting go. On my birthday, Dad came by early with a small gift. A photo frame. Inside, a picture of me, Mom, and him, one I'd never seen. "I found it cleaning out some boxes," he said. "Thought you might want it." I did. So much. He hugged me, gentle and hesitant. This time I didn't flinch. "I'm still figuring this out," he whispered. "Me too," I replied. That night, Mason organized a small party. Miss Ellen baked a cake that almost fell apart but tasted perfect anyway. Grandma told stories about Mom that made everyone laugh. Looking around, I realized this wasn't the family I started with, but it was still family. Messy, imperfect, but real. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. One last twist came months later. Dad told me he'd started going to therapy too. At first, I didn't know what to say. Then I just said, "I'm glad." Because even if he'd broken me once, maybe he could start fixing himself. And that mattered too. Years from now, I don't know what our relationship will look like. Maybe we'll get closer. Maybe we won't. But for now, we're both still trying. And sometimes that's the bravest thing we can do.